I was going to talk about some of the activities I'm involved in. I'm Director of Robotics and Drone Ecosystem Development in the Nordics, and that's a big job title, but I will talk to you about what we're doing in this space. And also, so basically I'm working in this area, somewhere around the machine learning, robotics, drones, and now I'm learning a lot more about AR, VR, mixed reality, thanks to many trips that we've had now to universities in Finland and the ecosystems around Kuopio and Joensuu, which I'll talk about. But what we're finding is that a lot of these technologies are being combined in different ways across different industries. So I work a lot with construction companies and also with agriculture across the Nordic countries. And what we're finding is that combinations of these technologies are finding their way very quickly into other industries because of the way we're all connected and everyone is copying everyone else. Of course, it looks more like this than like this, but for a conceptual discussion, we'll keep it like the London Underground. And some of the colors are a bit funny because it was developed on an iPad. But what we're seeing, of course, is that more and more things and services are becoming digitized. Products are becoming smaller, except this is the new iPhone 25. Some of you may have seen that. So, and also things are becoming more democratized. So we can work in teams across the world. Anyone also can pretty easily discover what people are up to and then innovate or invent on top of that. So we're living in some very interesting times. Part of my job is also to work with government institutions. So I've been working a lot with institutions in Finland, such as Ministry of Transport. And I think a couple of years ago in November 2015, they came out with this white paper, this strategic paper on how robotics is going to stimulate Finnish economy over the next 10 years. This is available on LVM-Piste.fi actually under publications, and it's a pretty good white paper. And in Denmark, the Danes, they have a national drone strategy in terms of how they're going to focus on developing hardware, software, drone services, but also how drones will start impacting and stimulating Danish economy and Danish industry. And I will go into some examples for this. The Danes, they also have this national program underneath this strategy. It's called Innovation on Wings, or Innovation på Vinger. And it's actually hosted by University of Southern Denmark, SDU. And they have a master's degree in drone engineering, and as well as a lot of other robotic engineering courses. And I sit on the steering team for this. And the whole point of this is to actually bring together different players in the drone industry. So different industrials such as construction, agriculture, energy, together with drone hardware and software startups and the universities and the government institutions. So if anyone wants to find out more about what the Danes are doing, then come to me and I can plug you into that. And also, if any of the universities here are interested to find out what University of Southern Denmark are up to, then again, I can help you get connected or even host you down there, because I'm in Denmark most weeks in Odense. And in Denmark, they have one of Europe's biggest ecosystems of robotic companies. So this is in the city of Odense, and this is what you have up here is a large number of companies, such as the big guys, such as ABB and other organizations such as Universal Robots, who are collecting together and developing products and services in and around the Odense area on the island of Fyn, together with a lot of startups and a lot of material specialists. And they have this organization now called Odense Robotics, and their job is basically to connect everyone together and to try and accelerate stimulation of services and products developed in and around Odense to create jobs and to drive economic activity. And I think also I heard recently that Facebook are also building one of their big European data centers in Odense. So there's a lot of activity there. And part of this kind of ecosystem is plugging in the universities, the research teams, the investors. They have an organization called Invest in Odense, and they basically have three priorities: healthcare, robotics, and drones. And I work closely with them. So if anyone from the cities is interested to see how the city of Odense is approaching this ecosystem challenge, then I can also help you out there. And I should just say, underneath this kind of robotics thing is a whole drone ecosystem, and I'll come to that in a minute. If I talk about some of the activities we're involved in Finland at the moment, and this is a Nordic kind of picture, but actually it's very focused on Finland. So, you know, where I live in Turku, what we see is a lot of activity around the autonomous ships with Rolls-Royce moving their R&D to Turku. And of course we have the Maya shipyards and the whole ecosystem, number of companies, the research activities that take place underneath this. And then up in Uusikaupunki and the wider area, we have a lot of activity around manufacturing of cars, but also the R&D around autonomous technologies in Finland and electrification of them as well. So what we're seeing is that there's a tremendous amount of activity going on, an opportunity for different types of organizations to work together. For large corporates, for IT companies, for research, for universities, for government institutions, etc. And of course, what is really interesting is how developments here are going to start impacting the design of both cities and port infrastructures, such as the digital archipelago that they're working on in and around Turku. And in parallel, of course, you know, there's a lot of advanced activity in and around healthcare. So IBM recently created a strategic program together with the TechS and many other universities and startups. And we have a new healthcare center in our office in Munkiniemi in Helsinki. And of course, in parallel, food and nutrition. So, and we've heard a lot today about advanced is in reality. I've only got mixed reality here. I'm learning all the time, and it should have all of the other definitions. So I will update my slides. So this is a really interesting place to be. We see that Finland is probably advancing a lot quicker than the other Nordic countries, and there's a lot of economic activity that we can take advantage of. So in Turku, I talked briefly about how some of these industries are coming together, and Turun Yliopisto have actually been running some interesting workshops at Turku Science Park and in the SparkUp startup hub, where they've brought together leaders from the healthcare industry, shipping, automotive, and the city to try and find out where there are examples of common technologies that were being developed in, say, one industry, such as gaming software, gaming technology, that could be applied to different industries and shared more. So we see that Turku University is taking a very proactive approach to actually bringing a lot of these activities together, and also in collaboration with Åbo Academy and the AMK in Turku as well. And we're doing a lot of these together with Salo because, and I will come to Salo in a minute actually. Yeah, here's a picture from a workshop we were running in Salo at the IoT center just outside the city, whereby the city of Salo, Yritys Salo, and some other organizations, what they're looking to try and do is stimulate R&D and startups in this space around transport and the movement of data and people and things and goods. So we see a lot of projects underway here in the Salo region, and Salo is trying to get closer to the Turku economic activity in order to take some of the load and drive activity between the two cities closer together. So Turku Science Park and Turku SparkUp, they've been running a lot of common events between the cities. And up here in Kuopio, somewhere behind there is the map of Finland, but it's disappeared. Up here in Kuopio, Joensuu, and the wider area, I've recently, thanks to University of Eastern Finland, Business Development Director Mikko Jutti, been introduced to a lot of the research teams in the universities, the healthcare faculties, and also met with Roman and the eye tracking team recently. And we've been running workshops with startups to try and see how we can expose some of the IBM technology, some of the Watson services to some of the startups and the research teams. So we have programs where universities and startups can actually get access to our technology very easily. So let me just talk quickly about why IBM is interested in drones, because we don't make drones or sell drones, but we're really interested in the data that comes out of the drone and the jobs that can be done and the processes that can be improved across different industries. So I'll give some examples of that. So again, you know, what we're interested in here is what we can actually learn from the data that come out of the drone, whether it's an air drone, a land drone, a subsea drone, or indeed any other kind of robot. In terms of drone, are there any drone geeks in the room? One at the back. You're not allowed to ask me any questions, okay? So, of course, you know, improvements to drone technology is happening all the time, the various components and the, you know, what you can do with a drone. But IBM is very interested in the analytics and security and storage and dispersion of the data to help customers do interesting new things. And depending on the country and the region you're in, there's different progress, there's different approaches to regulations. So Trafi and Naviair, for example, in Denmark, they're very advanced in their thinking, they're very connected to what's happening, lots of initiatives going on. I'm part of a steering team with the TechS, together with Trafi and others. So they're very advanced in their thinking. Other countries are a lot more cautious, such as in Sweden. And what we're finding is that a lot of the development, the R&D, the innovation is actually, and the money, the capital from venture capitalists is moving from Sweden into Finland and Denmark, especially because of the regulations and the ease of doing things here. I'll skip this. So in terms of working with drones and organizations, what I'm interested in doing is trying to figure out new alliances to help customers run pilots and take advantage of the technology, because we can't do everything on our own, yeah? So we need different players to be working together. And obviously to try and help customers understand how their business model could take advantage of data coming out of the drone, whether it's construction or wind turbines or agriculture or forestry. The Chinese have pretty much of a monopoly on a lot of the industrial and consumer drones. And we work with a lot of Nordic and European drone manufacturers. What we're finding now is that many of them are moving into software development. And these are some of the main areas, especially in Denmark, that they're focused on: machine vision and also swarm control. And these are areas also that the Danish universities are looking at. But IBM is also getting in on the game. So this is a recent patent that we applied for. I think this is where you have a bunch of drones that somehow meet in the air, coordinate themselves, and then they can pass packages between them or some other product. And the idea is around range extension. So this is not a product from IBM, but you've probably seen recent ones from Amazon as well. What's really interesting for me and for IBM is actually the jobs to be done in terms of the industrial customer and how they can use the drone to improve the performance of their business. So here are some examples. I've been working with this company called Nordic Unmanned, and they're based near Stavanger on the west coast of Norway. And they used to be helicopter pilots and coast guards. And the helicopter pilots, they work for Statoil. And when the oil crisis hit, I think some of them lost their jobs and they decided to create this new drone as a service company. So if you go to Nordic Unmanned Pista NO, there's actually a really nice video of how they take the senior management from Statnett. Statnett runs the electricity infrastructure in Norway. How they take them into the field and show them not only what their drones can do for inspection, but also how their drones can pick up wires and take them to dangerous places. And when these managers, they saw what you could actually do with a drone, not just in terms of the data, but also in terms of moving things around with it. These are fairly industrial Raytheon drones, I think. It was very easy for them to make a decision to sign this company, Nordic Unmanned, up to do the inspection and monitoring of all of Statnett's electricity infrastructure in Norway. That's a long country. And now this company, there's only 30 people in this company. They have the contract for monitoring all of Norway's railway lines. So this is an example of how, you know, a relatively small company with certain skills, they don't make drones, they don't sell drones, they offer drone data as a service, inspection services and pilots as a service, how they can disrupt the business model of, you know, traditional organizations who were doing this, helicopter pilots, other service organizations. And I work a lot, probably 50 to 60% in construction. So we've been doing a lot, for example, with Rambol in Denmark. And the thing with construction and engineering projects is that, is that they're very big, they're very complex, there's a lot of moving parts, raw materials, danger, risk, supply chains that are very hard to see into. And these are, 100 million euro projects or billion euro projects with very small margins. So anything you can do in terms of upfront architectural design or project management data that you can use to actually improve the performance of the project and improve the profitability at the end is a good thing. That's why construction companies and engineering companies are heavily focused on the drone. And it's not just about the data from the drone, it's also data from the different robots that they are starting to deploy for construction purposes. So for laying bricks or for putting in window panes in high-rises or in complex environments. And of course, data from 3D printing of concrete and other materials. So all of this provides a rich opportunity for people to create new services. So when a drone flies over an environment, obviously it takes some kind of imagery, some data, and it feeds it into a cloud, and they do some analytics with it, or it may do it on the actual device itself. But what's really interesting is how do you get from there to there? So how do you get from the drone flying over to actually getting someone to go and do something useful? And that's what the construction companies are really focused on. We also work a lot with in agriculture in Denmark, so we're working in some consortiums with University of Southern Denmark, Aarhus Agricultural University, and some startups. And we have one of Europe's biggest onion farmers actually on the island of Fyn. And what he's offered himself to be is a kind of pilot project. He has a very large farm, and each one of these squares is a decision that he has to make on what to do on his farm. Do I oil? Do I order fertilizer? Do I weed? So what he wants to do, together with the Danish consortium and IBM, is figure out how to automate his entire farming business. And he also sells the products and services to the consumers as well. So I think the University of Aarhus calculated that on his farm, he had to make 17,000 decisions every year. So the aim was to try and reduce that somehow to 2,000 decisions. So at the moment, we have this pilot project up and running. The idea is the drone fly over, capture the information, send it to the iPad of the farm manager, and then that manager make a decision. Do I need to weed? Do I need to oil? Or do I need to order something from the fertilizer supplier? And then the precise amount of fertilizer is delivered the next day. And obviously they can then put it onto another robot, which then deliver it to the precise point. So in Denmark, we see a lot of these proof of concepts and activities going on. And I made this picture for one of the Danish ministry institutions because we were trying to figure out, if these are some of the financial benefits of savings, time savings, quality of life savings on one farm in Fyn, what happened if we scale this kind of capability across every single farm in Denmark? Then it starts getting really interesting, as obviously food and agriculture is one of Denmark's biggest industries. And we were also looking into the fact that, the data is useful to one farmer and it's useful to the supply chain, but what happens if these farmers actually start sharing the information between them across the region? And we were discussing this with some farmers up in Seinäjoki region recently. So then the value of the data goes exponential very quickly, and they can start actually adapting their business model. So sharing the drones, maybe sharing the equipment, reducing their capital expenditure even more. When we started working with farmers in Denmark, we were getting objections that drones were too complicated, they didn't want to buy them, they didn't want to learn how to use them. So we were saying, you've always been using new technology, and the great thing about the drone is that you don't have to buy it. You don't even have to learn how to fly it. You could just order that drone as a service. There are many drone services companies in Denmark. So all you really have to do is interpret the data and then make a decision about what to do with it. And of course, with the drone in the agriculture, there are many different use cases: spraying or planting or just capturing information, picking things up. There's a forest behind it somewhere, but the colors disappeared, the green color. And I made this obviously because I'm here to try and learn more about your industry and also understand how, by connecting some of our researchers and engineers, we could maybe run some interesting projects. And actually, we had our engineers visit University of Helsinki research lab in Lammi about a year ago. They went up and they were looking into how the researchers could, the forestry faculty that is, how they could actually play around with some of the Watson visual imaging services based on the data from the drones that they were flying over their forests and lakes. So I'd be interested to see if there's something that we can follow up on that. And banks as well, banks and insurance companies, they're now starting to look at drones and offering drone as a service, because if you think about what banks do, they provide finance to many industries. And one thing that they're under pressure on is their own actual ROI at the moment. So what happens if bank or an insurance company suddenly starts running a drone as a service business and offering that data as a service to the people who are borrowing money from it to improve the yield, and also giving that bank better information, better insight in terms of their own risk management portfolio? So we're seeing some interesting movements now where banks are moving into very different fields, adapting their business models. And insurance companies as well, what they're looking to do is try and speed up the response of the claims and in parallel reduce the amount of fraud. And sending people out to assess a claim is expensive. Often sending them up to a high building or underground or to a remote place. So anything you can do with a drone to actually improve this process is going to be a good thing. These guys, this is from Arctic Drones, and they're startup based in Vantaa. So what they've developed is this autonomous indoor drone for security. And the reason why that picture is a bit shaky is because I took it with my mobile phone and it came right up to my face and I was getting a bit nervous. And it scanned me when it was about this far away, and then it stopped and then it moved around. And the idea behind this is that they use it for seeing if there are windows open around the buildings, fire alarms, security issues. So there's a lot of, and I was showing this actually to healthcare faculty at Savonia in Kuopio yesterday, because there's a lot of interest about how and when drones start penetrating hospitals and schools and other organizations. Of course, this is pretty big at the moment and it's fairly robust, but once these things start getting smaller, and of course innovations coming out of the military tend to find their way into industry fairly quickly, materials getting smaller, components getting smaller, and battery life getting longer, we'll start seeing these things in buildings. So let me talk about some examples of how we're developing ecosystems across different industries around drones and robotics in the Nordics. Part of the problem is getting different organizations of different sizes to be able to talk to each other and understand each other and work together. So getting a large corporation such as IBM or a big industrial, a research institute, university startup, government organization, we often talk different languages, and that's part of the challenge here. This is the airport at Hans Christian Andersen Airport, just outside of the city of Odense, about 10 kilometers from Odense. So what University of Southern Denmark have now done is actually bought a hangar here. And what they're going to do is they're going to fill it with startups, drone hardware startups, software startups, and researchers from the university. And the idea is to stimulate economic activity, and because they have a fixed area of drone testing space, be able to run their proof of concepts and their MVPs very fast. So we're participating in this ecosystem development around this airport, so this Hans Christian Andersen Airport, together with the UAS Test Center of Denmark. So we have the universities, we have Invest in Odense and the city. We've got IBM and now Ericsson as well, and some drone manufacturers. Skywatch is Denmark's biggest drone manufacturer. And what we've been doing is running a lot of conferences and startups and hackathons and Shark Tanks. So here's an example of a conference that I hosted in January of this year, Drones in Construction. So on the agenda, we brought in the CIO of Ramboll and senior management from NCC, as well as some Danish architectural companies. And in the audience, we had 80 startups from Danish drone companies, other Nordic startups as well in the drone space. And the idea was that the Ramboll, the NCC, would be talking about the business challenges that they have, and that these startups would get more insight and get closer to them and be able to come up with new ideas. And what we did was, 2 weeks later, we turned it around and we ran Shark Tanks. So these startups had to come back and actually present to a panel of judges, including Ramboll, NCC, myself, and some architectural firms, their ideas of how they could solve, using drones and data from drones, how they could solve some of these construction engineering problems. And the winners would get access to Ramboll, they get access to software from IBM, they get mentoring advice and things like this. So the idea is to stimulate this kind of activity between the startups, the universities, and the bigger corporations. So this is a busy picture, but let me explain it. This is a high-level view of the ecosystem that we're developing around the drone center in Denmark. So up here in the brown, what you have to understand is what's in it for everyone. All of the different parties that you need to create an ecosystem are looking for different things and can bring different things. So if you think about the government, the city of Odense, they're looking to stimulate the economy and to create jobs. The drone test center themselves, they want to be known as the top Nordic drone test center, where people come and invest time and money in order to test their latest technologies. Naviair, which is like Trafi, they want a place where they can actually test and theorize about their latest drone regulations and understand the impact in a very, very complex environment, because they're doing it in actually a real airport, Hans Christian Andersen Airport. Skywatch is a drone manufacturer, and they want somewhere where they can actually test their new hardware platforms. University of Southern Denmark and the researchers and the startups, they want to be able to come to an environment that's controlled, where they can get access to a lot of good resource. And of course, customers in the industry, in construction, agriculture, energy, utilities, they want to be able to bring their problems outside of their day-to-day operations and get access to people with new ideas. And IBM is looking to grow its business, of course, in terms of analytics across all of the industries. So this is an evolving picture, but the idea is to try and explain some of the different parties involved in this. So when we're trying to develop a new ecosystem, whether it's for agriculture, or whether it's for construction, engineering, energy, utilities, military, you need different people and different groups who can actually understand how to bring things together. So you need people who understand the industry very well. Obviously, you're going to need access to some capital, so people who can interpret and understand and manipulate data and understand how that might affect the jobs to be done. And obviously, you need some expertise in the hardware platform. And an environment, you need someone who can actually run the environment where you're setting up your hub. So what I focus on is trying to create these ecosystems across the Nordic countries, because I think that they basically accelerate everyone's capabilities. No one can do everything on their own anymore. So let me talk about some of the tools, the business tools that we use also to help us work together with different types of organizations, such as startups and universities. If you think about the challenge that we all face, so whether you're a university, a startup, IBM, large corporation, we're all trying to run a business or a service or offer some academic activities. And at the same time, we're also looking for the next big thing to do. And doing these two things together at the same time is really difficult, because we have limited resources and conflicting priorities. So the only way to really keep this going is to start creating ecosystems and partnerships with the right organizations. So this is another way to think about the problem. If we're running a service or building products up here, offering those to the market, and we've got a great idea for something down here, how do we get that into operation without disrupting the people who are delivering this? So one of the best ways to actually create these waves and waves of new ideas, new revenue streams, is actually to partner up with people, because very often companies or organizations, they leave their new innovations and their new creative projects until too late. And if you leave it until too late, you're too busy firefighting the previous kind of iteration of whatever good or service you're offering. So I'm really interested in combinations of technology and organization to help close this gap. And also to help try and solve this problem on an ongoing basis. So when we get a new idea for something, there's often a lot of questions, a lot of risk, a lot of uncertainty. So maybe we invest a little bit of resource and we learn something new. So we invest a bit more, but we also discover new risks. So what I'm interested in is how can we actually accelerate this by partnering up with the right organizations. And over time, our business model, we get clarity on new opportunities to pivot to. Different organizations face different challenges with taking advantage of what's going on. So there's scaling. How do you scale a business or scale a service? That's usually not such a challenge. Technology is not a challenge so much anymore, because you can usually find someone who can deliver the technology. It's just a question of whether you can figure out a way to work with them. These tend to be the biggest problems around, breaking into new ecosystems or creating them, and also adapting your own business model. We also find with some of these newer technologies in organizations, these kind of social challenges or incentive challenges, they could be in large companies, whereby someone in the organization has a great idea, but everyone is too busy doing the odd thing, delivering on the current quarter, for example, or they don't know what to do with the technology, or maybe they've tried it before and it wasn't ready, or the regulation or the environment wasn't ready. Meanwhile, over here, someone is being very creative and taking a giant leap. We also have these kind of issues where there's so much on offer. There's so many things that people could be focused on, investing time and money on, creating alliances on. So very often organizations, they don't know where to start. They're just kind of stuck. Or they're moving too fast in the wrong direction. Or these are often sales organizations, large sales organizations who have very little peripheral vision, and they're just, following the current quarter. Or they're intellectually lazy. And these are organizations that are over-engineering an idea or a solution, and it's never going to get off the ground. And one of the reasons why I work so much with the science parks, with the AMKs, with the universities, is there's a lot more oxygen in the room to try new things out. And by exposing, say, IBM research or IBM engineers to them, we can often create some really interesting activities around different industries. So we do a lot of this visual modeling to try and help us figure out how to work with new organizations and new customers and research, and how we can basically complement each other and do these two things at the same time. So we use a business model canvas that some of you may be familiar with, but we also look into opportunity and risk and strengths and weaknesses and some gap analysis. And basically the idea is we run these half-day workshops with customers, with universities, to try and visualize what could be done and figure out, so in the case of drones, figure out how we could use data from drones or working with new alliances in the drone space to actually give us a bit more leverage. So what I try and do is I've created this program using these different apps, free apps, most of them, there's no IBM technology in there, to try and help people visualize how different organizations can work together. And if we have any more time, I could give a quick demonstration of them. if I could just connect my iPad. Yeah? Okay. Is it HDMI? Any questions on, before I do this, are there any questions on some of the ecosystem activity? Or you can wait till after I've done this. Okay, so if you remember this picture, up here we have the business model canvas actually for the Danish drone robotic ecosystem at the airport in Hans Christian Andersen. It's a bit, the font is a bit screwed up, but for those of you that are not familiar with this canvas, it's quite a good way of actually sketching ideas out with new organizations or business models. So in the middle here, we have the value propositions that we were trying to figure out together with the airport, with the Hans Christian Andersen Airport, with the Invest in Odense and the drone manufacturers. And we did this about a year ago in Denmark as a run-up to their setting their Danish drone strategy that I showed you. What we were trying to figure out was, by combining forces between the different organizations, you know, what kind of customer segments could we be attracting to the drone airport? And also, you know, what kind of revenue and jobs and other benefits could we be deriving from this new ecosystem? And then we were also trying to figure out what activities, resources, costs, and new alliances needed to be actually brought in or done in order to get this moving. And at the same time, what we were also interested in was, we looked at agriculture, specifically Danish drone agriculture usage. So on the left here, sorry, on the right here, we have some of the economic benefits at a high level of using drones on farms. And what we were trying to do was visualize here and understand some of the probabilities or the likelihood and the impact of those benefits accruing if we got the right organizations together. Now, this is not a scientific tool. This is just really for visual discussion and stimulation. So what we were just basically trying to understand was where to prioritize our efforts and which organizations to bring in. And we were also interested in risk. So what kind of risks are there with using drones on agriculture? Capital risks, regulation risks, social risks, technology, privacy, these kind of risks. So again, we were using these tools together with the business model canvas to try and build out a map of what is possible. And at the same time, we were also interested in the relative strengths and weaknesses of the combined forces in the room. So by combining the expertise from the Danish drone industry, from some of the hardware and software startups, together with the airport, together with the government institutions and the financial institutions and the city of Odense, what could we actually do together? And the last tool I was going to show you was this one. So this is just a gap analysis drawing tool, really. So here again we have the Danish drone ecosystem, and under here we were trying to figure out some of the high-level tasks that we needed to do in order to actually get this thing rolling. And the red line is where we think we are now, and this is supposed to be green. The green line is where we want to get to. And the question is, what is that gap? Is it time? Is it money? Is it resource? Is it regulation? Is it politics? Is it real? Is it everything? So in these working groups, we were just trying to figure out relatively where we are. And of course, there's a lot of PhDs and scientists in here, and this is not a scientific tool, but it's more for workshops. And when you actually start combining these tools together in a meeting, very quickly you can start to actually visualize and discover what is possible. And then you can obviously drill down even more. So the whole point of this program really is to just get a bit more clarity on what we can do in different industries by combining different organizations. So, and often, you know, if we look at a business problem from different angles, we start learning different things, and then people open up, they start bringing in different resources and ideas. Yeah, and hopefully at some point we find a faster way through to a new business model. So this is what I spend a lot of time on, running these workshops between universities, research, companies, IBM, to try and figure out what kind of variables we have to play with in order to develop new opportunities and businesses. So that's my story.
Thank you very much. So I think that we have time, couple questions, so if somebody want to ask something.
Okay, thank you. My name is Jani Holopainen, University of Helsinki. Thanks, Patrick, for the inspirational talk and presentation. Actually, I would like to make an announcement and take this opportunity to announce that yesterday in University of Helsinki Science Corner, Yliopistonkatu 4, so right in the city center, we established Mixed Reality Hub. So we've been based on research in a forest sector. So we used to be virtual reality forest research group and concentrating on mixed reality applications in the forestry field, but there has been a demand from other fields as well. So now we are Mixed Reality Hub, and I'm glad to hear that you've been involved in Denmark in a similar hubs, and I would like to invite you and other fellows here as well to the Mixed Reality Hub right in the Helsinki city center. So basically we are doing
I will be there on Monday.
Oh yeah,
okay.
Welcome. Yeah.
Great.
So basically what we are doing, we are making research on these proof of concepts and fast prototyping in the variety of field of mixed reality, including drones, but also augmented reality, virtual reality, augmented virtuality applications. So anyone here being interested to join our hub, and especially you, Patrick, you are most welcome.
Thank you. Good question.
Okay, other announcements? Other question?
Okay, well, people are welcome to find me afterwards, and I'm happy to come and meet you and jump into more details and also expose some of the resources we have. So